Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go.
My guest, Ian Weinreich, is a writer and producer. He wrote on The Flight Attendant, which was nominated for a WGA award for Best New Series. Ian's episode in Season 2 featured an epic mother-daughter fight between Kayley, Cuoco, and Sharon Stone, which I loved. He's currently wrapping up writing on Season 2 of Dead Boy Detectives. It's a spinoff from Neil Gaiman's Sandman that is about to be released on Netflix. Ian got his start in TV writers' rooms at Disney. You might know of his work from shows like Zack and Mia, Bunked, and My Little Pony: Reign of Buttercup Sprinkles. He went on to co-showrun the third season of Skylanders Academy for Activision on Netflix. But Ian's dark, wry, comedic voice really shines through in his current work. It's great. Also, you can catch his work on The Screen Junkie Show and Honest Trailers. Ian's writing is clever, sensitive, and incredibly intelligent, much like the man himself. Please enjoy my conversation with Ian Weinreich.
So, Ian Weinreich, welcome to Creators Cafe, and cheers.
Cheers.
All right, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Earl Grey tea.
Yeah, and I've got an iced latte from Bohemia, which is a great spot.
I have actually not been there.
Yeah, it's like, if you like tea, they've got a really good selection. And it's kind of, it's Bohemian, so there's lots of, like couches and upholstery.
Oh, cool.
And it's kind of there's a lot of writers there. I saw a writer friend.
Oh, you ran into one there?
Yep,
Yeah.
just like hanging out writing. So, yeah.
That's what we do.
I know. So, as a writer, do you think of yourself primarily as a writer? You've now been a producer. How do you consider yourself, like what labels or identities do you hang on to in your head?
When people ask me what I do, I usually say TV writer, first and foremost. I still think of myself mostly as a writer. I think for me, the producing stuff just comes second and is just kind of part of my job, where I don't think of myself as a producer as far as like, it's what I do for a living.
Right.
It just sort of comes with the writing now at the level I'm at with on the shows that I'm on.
Yeah, which is pretty cool and pretty incredible. So we'll get into that.
No.
When you were growing up, was writing the path that you wanted to be on? Was movies or art, or did it kind of come later? How did that come about for you?
Yeah, basically since I was 5, I wanted to be a writer.
Wow.
Except for a few years where I wanted to be Indiana Jones. And then Jurassic Park came out, so I wanted to be a paleontologist for a while.
That's pretty awesome.
I still kind of do.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be a writer since I was a young kid. But, when you're that age, you don't know what TV writing or screenwriting is. So I think, like most kids, wanted to write. At that point, especially, wanted to write books. Turns out I'm not that good at that.
Okay.
So it's good to know. But so it was always sort of the push was to sort of go in that direction, and then it kind of turned into movies, and then eventually that turned into focusing on TV.
Okay, nice.
But it took a while to get there. I was in grad school before I switched to television.
Oh, interesting. So when you went to grad school at NYU, right? Mm-hmm. So in your head, when you went to NYU, that was for film writing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Specifically film writing.
Okay, what pulled you in the TV direction?
Honestly, it's going to make me sound like I have no drive of my own, but like my best friend who I met there and I'm still best friends with, and who actually writes with me on the show I'm on right now, sold me on it. He was like, we had to pick a focus. NYU, the way it was set up was the writing department there, it was film, TV, and theater. And I'm not a theater person. I learned that pretty quickly. But you had to eventually second year pick a focus. Mm-hmm. And he just sort of sold me on it. And smartly, he was right, because it fits my strengths a lot better than film writing does.
What do you see as the biggest differences between TV and film? Because I think somebody from the outside that just sees things on a screen might not be able to identify the differences.
Well, for one thing, if you are in TV writing, the chances are what you write will be seen by people.
Yeah.
I have friends who are incredibly successful film writers and massively successful financially and professionally, and they've never actually had a movie made.
I have that too.
Yeah.
Friends that are they teach screenwriting classes.
Mm-hmm.
They've had many movies bought.
Yeah.
And they just don't get to see their work.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
that was very important to me.
Yeah.
I have this fear about like screaming into the abyss.
Cheers. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
I've written on like when I was getting, in my early career, like mid-20s, and I was writing for like websites and stuff. I knew it was just like no one's reading these articles. Like, what am I doing? And like that was always sort of in the back of my head. Like I wanted things that I wrote to be seen by people.
Yeah.
So that's a large difference. Certainly the structure is very different. Like I do write films sometimes and have, had the pleasure of getting paid for some of it sometimes.
Nice.
But that structure comes much more difficult for me. And so I don't enjoy it as much, and I struggle with it a little bit.
Do you think it's because of the episodic nature of TV that you like to keep multiple stories going, or is it that it's shorter, or just what the structure is?
I mean, it's both of those things.
Okay.
It's a lot of just the. It's certainly, I find TV much easier. So it's a little bit of a cheat, but just sort of building towards end of acts constantly. I find I know how to write to that. Whereas with the constant sort of rising and falling action of film structure, I struggle a little bit more. And I like also with TV that it's much faster in that like you have like a week to write your episode and you're like, oh, okay. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah.
So, and I work much better with a gun to my head.
Yeah.
So like I need that.
Yeah.
So it's far more appealing for me.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Like if I have 4 projects that all have deadlines, I'm in much better shape than if I have one project and nebulous, it's flexible in the future. Yeah. So you've talked about in the past that one of your strengths is plot. And I got to watch your episodes of The Flight Attendant recently. And first of all, I agree. I think you're so good in ways that make me jealous and angry at getting to the heart of the action so succinctly. And you can even do it, like you can have one thing happening in one room, something else is happening in another room, and in 20 seconds, we've moved the plot forward so far. And I'm an actor primarily and director. But I've gotten into writing some in the past couple of years, and that is like the hardest thing for me coming at it from the character side is to kind of get into the mindset of chopping to the essence of the action so quickly. How do you get good at that other than practice? I'm sure you've practiced decades now.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's a good thing. And like, is it just watching for that in other people's work? Is it something that does come naturally to you? Is it that like that's been your taste, that you like that succinct action?
Yeah. Well, I have to first of all give credit to my showrunner on Flight Attendant, who was very much a mentor of mine, who has taught me a lot, and certainly a large part of TV. You want scenes to breathe, and you want. As a writer, you want that. And in TV, you learn very quickly, like, you have a lot of story to tell, and you don't have many pages to do it. And so getting into the habit of, how do I get in and out of this? How do I get to the point of this as quickly as possible while still being artistic and creative, I think is one of the larger lessons that any TV writer sort of has to learn.
Yeah.
If you see a lot of my first drafts of scenes, they're like 5-6 pages. And you're like, well, how do I turn this into a page and a half?
Right. Okay.
And so I think that comes with that, about looking at a scene and being like, knowing the fastest way to get in and the fastest way to get out and how to do it creatively and that's still entertaining and doesn't feel choppy.
Yeah.
And that certainly takes a little while. But once you sort of know that and get in the mindset of that, it does start coming a little more naturally.
Yeah. I'm in awe of that talent of yours. And I think that comes out so well in those episodes.
Thank you.
When you're listed as the writer for an episode like that, I know you're in charge of it. How much of the episode, I know you're really in charge of it. How much do you write and how much does the room write?
It's different for many different shows. Our room is run on Flight Attendant and the one I'm on now a little more traditionally, which is as a room together, you sort of break the episode. And so everyone sort of will be able to, if you know it's your episode, you sort of run the break, but everyone can offer opinions and pitches and about like specific scenes, certain characters and what happened, what's the trajectory of A, B, C. And then it's your job as the writer to take all of that and go off alone, or maybe you might be splitting the episode with somebody, so usually it's one or two people, go off alone and turn that into the outline, and then eventually turn that into the script by yourself. So you're doing predominantly all the writing. Then your showrunner does their pass. And so depending on how close it is to their voice and their tone and their vision for that episode and for the series as a whole, that then stuff starts to change a little bit. And so the more you know the voice of the show and the voice of your boss, I think the less you get rewritten, because like this feels like something that he would write, that he would want.
Oh, that's cool.
And luckily I've known my boss for 15 years, and I've worked with him for.
Can you name names?
Steve Yockey.
Yeah.
I've now worked on 2 shows with him since 2019, so I like to think that, speaking out of turn, that I kind of know. I can do a good impression of his voice, at least. So when I turn it into him, it's not a complete rewrite. Yeah. So that's the more traditional way of it. A lot of times, though, some shows will do, especially if you're under the gun and you're behind schedule, where it might be my name on the script, but it'll be like, you take scene 1, you take scene 2, you take scene 3, write it. They call it Frankensteining a draft. Okay, yeah. And then the showrunner will take that and then try to make it smooth over so it feels like one person wrote it. Yeah. And I've worked on shows like that as well.
Wow. I mean, that makes sense, but I think the world at large was a little more introduced to what goes on in a writer's room because of the strike, which is one of the one of the benefits I guess we got out of it, was just kind of pulling open the curtain of what was going on. But I think a lot of people just think of a writer writes a thing, whereas a film writer might sit down and write a film script over time, but a TV room is this collaborative beast writing a season, which is, I mean, I think that's part of why it's so exciting, is that it's something that one person really couldn't accomplish the amount of work and the quality of work in such amount of time. What do you like versus what are the challenges of you don't have to name names here, of like rooms you've been in over the years? What are some of the pros and cons of being in a room?
Certainly the pros is I find the collaborative. I like TV writing especially because it's both very collaborative, and then I get to go leave for like 2 weeks to be by myself and write.
That's kind of awesome. It's the best of both worlds.
I find, especially with season 2 Flight Attendant was completely remote. So I was in my apartment the entire time, and I learned where I'm like, oh, I like being, even though it goes against my nature most of the time, I'm like, oh, I do like being around people, actually. So I do like the collaborative nature of it, and I do like that I can then go and sort of be solo in my office and be left alone. I mean, the cons are the cons, I think, that come with any office job where it's a clash of personality sometimes. Yeah. It's a lot of, I mean, any writing or any creative field whatsoever, I think the expression of, killing your darlings is certainly much more, I think, prevalent in TV writing than film writing, because, someone else will just offer a pitch that's better than yours, and even if it's your episode, like, it's going, the best pitch goes in. Yeah. It doesn't really matter whose it is and whose episode it is. Yeah. So you have to sit there and sort of nod your head and be okay with it, and a lot of stuff that gets removed from my scripts, I hold on to and find ways of putting them in stuff later on. And
that's smart. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Because it might be like a good idea, wrong time.
Yeah. It's a good joke. It's a good line of dialogue. Yeah. It's a good little character moment. And it's like, I like to have a little stockpile.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because you're just like being brilliant on demand, which honestly, the demand is part of what probably brings it. But No, you're fine.
That's another thing where, in a writer's room, it's both a pro and a con, I think, which is like someone will be like, all right, what is he? We need a joke here, or someone, and you're like, oh, and you have to come up with a joke on the spot.
Yeah.
And it's both stressful, but also, again, like because I work better under the gun, it's like I kind of thrive in that atmosphere. But it could. I also had worked in more of a comedy room before.
Yeah.
And that's that entire job is just being funny, like. When someone like points a finger at you and says, "Give me a better punchline," and you're like, "Give me 5 minutes." Like, no, we need it right now.
Yeah.
So that's its own nightmare.
That's interesting though, because I bet in some ways it helps get past. You can't have writer's block if there's a deadline, and you can't have comedy block if someone's pointing at you and saying, in some ways there's like, I have to deliver, and so you will.
Yeah. I mean, that's also the benefit of a room as well, where there are other people to sort of step in and save you sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's also, I will say, what I'll say is, it's very, TV specifically, you could spend, the way you usually get a job is you have written a sample, especially earlier on in your career. You've written a spec. That's what gets sent around. Someone reads that, likes it, brings you in to meet with you, hires you on the show. You could have spent 2 years writing that spec. And it could be a great, amazing script.
Yeah.
But then someone's going to be like, now do that exact same thing again, but then you have till next week.
Oh my gosh.
So,
okay.
you know what I mean? So it's like,
yeah.
I think the rooms can be a little bit oppressive. And I think sometimes, I do think they're probably better now, but I feel like especially before my time, like in the 90s, when I got my start, it was a little over a decade ago, but a lot of the people in the room, it was a Disney Channel, were guys much farther on in their careers, kind of running down a little bit, and had come from like 90s and early 2000s sitcom rooms.
Yeah.
And so the room was being run the way they had in the past, and it was oppressive at times.
Yeah.
And I don't feel that the same way anymore.
Okay.
But at comedy room especially, it was like really, it could get brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone, you're expected to have a very rough sense of humor, so you needed a thick skin, which it was all good lessons learned.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to learn from people who had sort of come out of those like 90s sitcoms. Like, I think my showrunner had been like a Mad About You writer, and like going back.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, but it was also like, if you're not, you needed to go in with like a little bit of a suit of armor.
Yeah. Yeah. So we won't spend much time on that period, but what, I think I spent a lot of time performing in like, I did national tours of children's shows and musicals and things for a few years. And something I learned working on children's material or theater for younger audiences and everything is that they are pretty brutal in that they don't hold back. And that was theater, so you got the immediate response. But what was great about it was you knew instantly if things worked or if people hated it. Were there other things that you kind of picked up in working on Disney shows that you've now been able to transfer into work that you're working on now?
Interesting. I think so. Obviously, things are a little different because I work on hour-long shows now. But when you're doing run-throughs, you are getting instant feedback on what jokes are working, what jokes aren't working, because you are doing these sort of theatrical live performances of the episodes from beginning to end in front of a group of people before you're filming. So there is you do sort of learn about pacing a lot and realizing like scenes like this drag. A scene like this needs another joke in the middle somewhere because it's dragging. You learn a lot about what kind of jokes work, what kind of jokes don't work. I think most of what I picked up from working at Disney was more just about how rooms work. Yeah. And the dynamic among the different tiers and levels, and also dealing with the network and with the execs and seeing how not to deal with them as well. I mean, I'll say that my show was canceled after 2 seasons. And probably because of the way people dealt with the network and the execs.
Got it.
So I saw how not to treat people as well.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I don't miss it.
Happy I did it. Happy to be not doing it.
Yeah, I was in that world for like 5 years. I'm happy to be out of it, but
Yeah.
I did have a lot of fun and I did learn a lot.
Okay, nice. Yeah. And something I think is cool about the body of work you've gotten to do is you haven't gotten stuck in a kind of procedural land. You're doing such cool original work. And I want to talk when we have a little more time in the second half about the show that you're currently on. But you get to work in these like supernatural elements. You get to work with in and out of realism, but it doesn't seem like you've gotten stuck in one arena, and that's incredible and says a lot about you as an artist as well.
I'm very lucky.
Yeah, I mean,
I am.
That is probably true.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've done things to put you on that road. What has helped you kind of get into such a cool and interesting space?
Honestly, it's based on the people I surround myself with and the other creative types I surround myself with, because the way I got out of kids' TV, and I'm sure you know this, where it's like everyone's looking to put you in a box in any creative endeavor. It's like you're the X, Y, and Z person. And any meeting I ever have, when people look at my resume, like any general, they're always like remarking on how crazy it is that I was able to get out of kids' TV. Because I think everyone, first of all, kids' TV, I should just say, like, those shows, your writer's room is like 40 weeks a year. So like, and there's very few shows like that anymore. So it's a good, I don't want to just like,
it's a great
crap
job.
all over. It's a great job.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of pros to it, but everyone remarks on how they don't know. It's like it's very hard to get out of that because it's very easy to get pigeonholed.
Yeah.
It just so happened that I knew somebody who I knew we had a very similar sensibility as far as humor and darkness and horror, and it was someone who, fortunately, I have a couple of friends that I share material with and who feel comfortable doing it with me and bounce ideas off each other on different projects we're working on, and just through that and through knowing sort of my own sensibility and what I'm capable of, I was asked to go on his first show when he finally had one.
Nice.
So it was really, like most things, it was luck, timing, but also, a significant amount of perseverance, I suppose.
Yeah.
Of, I had the benefit of being unmarried, no kids, and no mortgage, so I could take a risk and leave the safety of Disney.
Yeah.
My writing partner from that time is still there. But again, it's like, when you have other responsibilities, it's a little hard, maybe a little more difficult to take a leap.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
It's like all factors in. But there's also people that are in that circumstance and might have not nurtured those connections or
absolutely.
Supported the writing exchange with other people. And it's one of those, you don't know, we never know everything that factors in. But it's nice to hear stories of somebody kind of taking that turn and really getting in a direction of where they really want to be and is clearly a good fit.
Oh, thank you.
Which is really great. Of just like what you were saying, like your dark sensibility is such a beautiful fit for a flight attendant because it's got this like wry observational nature of life even within the story itself. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Flight Attendant, and especially the show I'm on now, fortunately, I think my love of horror, spy stuff, Hardy Boys, like everything is sort of coalesced strangely into one thing, and so it was a great experience, and I feel like it was a really good fit, and I was very happy. It was a great experience to be on that show.
Are you ready to be confident and comfortable in front of a camera? Well, my name is Jessica Payne, and I would love to help you. I'm an actor, acting coach, and the host of the Creators Cafe video podcast. I have helped thousands of people to learn the skills of a Hollywood actor to be more comfortable in their body, voice, and mindset whenever you press record. So if you're an entrepreneur, a business person who needs to be in front of the camera, or you want to get into digital content creation, I would love to offer you one-on-one on-camera performance coaching so that you feel like when you press record, you can be your best self. Check out the link below for more details, and I can't wait to work with you. Let's have fun together. I want to talk to you specifically about Flight Attendant.
Sure.
Specifically about the second season, your episode, and the mother-daughter relationship, and all of that crafted in from the beginning of breaking the season. How much of that was your pitches? How much of that was in the original pitch? How does something like that come about?
The arc with Cassie's mom was, I believe, always sort of there from before the season even started.
Yeah.
And was always part of the season pitch. And I feel like what's usually commonplace is you have a general idea of what it's going to be, you sort of know where it's going to fall, and then as you start breaking into the episodes, stuff starts to shift a little bit. You're getting network notes about certain characters, so that changes things a little bit. But that had always sort of been the plan, was that, this was going to be the season where Cassie finally deals with her mom.
Okay.
And then, like most things, I think, especially with TV and any creative endeavor, like you start to get notes, so you have to sort of address those, and they might, so it changed a little bit, their dynamic together and how it ended, but a lot of it was already sort of like thought out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you got to write for Kayley, Cuoco, and Sharon Stone.
I did not know that going in.
I was going to say, that's kind of dreamy. How did that come about? How did you...
I mean, it was just
what was the process like for you? Did it change anything?
It was luck of the draw that I got that episode.
Okay.
And I was given that episode because, for two reasons. I think one, my season 1 episode featured her brother a lot.
Right.
And so I somehow became the family episode guy.
Yeah.
Because that season 1 episode, I think, went over very well. So,
yeah.
And also because there was a good amount of action and sort of cat and mouse stuff in that episode, and I think that's definitely what my strength is like the plotty stuff, the more like as opposed to the more character-y stuff.
Yeah.
So I just happened to be lucky enough to get that episode.
Yeah.
We did not know at that point who was going to be cast as her mom, so there wasn't that much pressure of when I was writing it.
Yeah.
And a lot of that too. Steve Yockey had a large part of additions and rewriting for that scene, because I think he had a very clear picture of what he wanted. So I think I kind of just went in and did like the groundwork, and then he was able to really give it what it needed.
Yeah, I just really appreciated it because I've recently seen the Bear, the episode with the mom and the holiday and everything, and to see two actresses kind of who are probably up for some similar roles, cast in pretty similar situations. And I really, truly loved both episodes, and just how subtle yours was. And it was beautiful and painful, and just like, this is the other way it could go. And it felt like even more deeply stabbing. I really just appreciated it even more.
Oh, thank you. I do think that a lot of times being quiet and more controlled can be much more brutal.
It was pretty brutal. But then at the same time, you've got, fireworks and explosions and death.
Yeah.
And
that's the balance of that show is you have this
You've got both.
sort of, this traumatic family moment that's been brewing for 20 years, and then the next scene you're on the run from North Koreans.
Yes.
It really, I think a lot of the fun of that show, and a lot of the shows that I do write on, I'm fortunate, are these sort of genre mashups a little bit.
I love that. I hope that we go there more in our industry, because
I think it will be.
It's so much more creative, and it's so much more exciting. What are you really proud of that you've done?
It seems a little strange, but I think my work that I'm most proud of is I co-ran an animated show on Netflix for one season with a really good friend of mine And it was a strange thing where, a lot of these studios have writers programs, like Disney has one where it's almost like you're under contract for like a year or so. Usually they're diversity programs, and some places have just like younger writers coming in, and it's like, are you going to work here for a year? You're going to develop whatever we want you to develop or write whatever we want you to write under this one contract. And my former writing partner and I got hired out of Disney by Activision. The video game company was trying to branch out more into original content. And they only had like one show at the time on the air, which was this animated series for Netflix based on one of their games called Skylanders. I think the show was called like Skylanders Academy. And they'd done 2 seasons, and then our contract was almost up, and they wanted to do one more season of the show, but they wanted to replace, they didn't like the direction it was going in. And so they asked us if we wanted to take it over. So it was basically me and my one friend in an office together, just coming up with and breaking the entire season.
Wow.
And then having to see it through pre-production, production, and post-production, which is its own nightmare. And I could complain about too. But it was sort of the first thing that we had kind of total control over.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting experience, and I still enjoy going back. I'll rewatch episodes from like Disney Channel stuff sometimes, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I'll put that on, and I'm like, I'm still very amused by it.
Yeah. I watched some clips of it. And
Really?
I like the tone. Yeah, actually.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
it was basically just the two of us. And we've known each other for like 20 years, so and we got to go to France a lot. That's where the animation company was based. So it was a cool experience.
That's really cool. Now you're on a new show that's finally going to come out soon.
Yep.
Can you talk about that?
It's Dead Boy Detectives, which is going to be on Netflix. And it's from Sandman. So it's a spinoff from Neil Gaiman's Sandman.
Yeah. So,
and it's like a detective show, but it's also got horror elements. It's sort of like Hardy Boys on crack.
Yeah.
So it's got a lot of the same. It's a little more fun and rompy than Sandman.
Okay.
It's not as dark it's certainly dark, but it's not as philosophical, let's say.
Okay.
So it's a fun tone.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
I love Neil Gaiman's work.
Oh yeah.
And if you're into dark comedy, he's like exactly the guy to be working on his material. What's it like working on kind of received material like that, where it's in a world, and so you have a lot of freedom, because I mean, it's not like you're working on it's not like you're doing the next iteration of Batman or Superman. It's not like that level of known, but it is out there in the world. It exists. The author is still with us. So there's like a lot of oversight, but also a lot of freedom. Where do you land in that?
I think it's kind of what you said, where it's not, because it is a lesser known property, and because the general public doesn't know that much about them, and there actually isn't that much. There's a good amount of comics, but the world of Dead Boys isn't as detailed as some other properties are. So we had a pretty big amount of leeway. And there are certain things, because it is part of Sandman, we couldn't just bring in like Death or Dream or any of those characters if we wanted to. We couldn't like mess around with them, but we had a lot of room to play with, because I think the show is both respectful of the source material, but also brings in a lot of new things.
Okay.
So it's a balance, and because it isn't, we didn't have anyone breathing down our neck about it. Like, you need to put this in, you need to put this in, we have to reference this. It's more just finding moments for that kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was, again, very lucky.
Nice. And you're already finishing up season 2 before season 1 has dropped, which has got to be such a weird place to be.
We're almost done writing season 2, and then, season 1 will be out in a little early mid-spring, basically.
Yeah.
It was strange, obviously because of the strike and everything, like things shifted. So it wasn't meant to be this way, but it would be nice to have gotten some semblance of what the reception was to season 1 before we went into season 2, but I'm happy that we're doing more.
Yeah, it's crazy flying blind, but also getting that
the demand to do more is fantastic. So
Yeah.
you got to go with it.
I think they were Netflix. I think was very happy with what they've seen so far. So it was
Incredible. Good. Dream World. What kind of projects are you working on? And are you a showrunner? Are you what's the kind of dream plan?
It's certainly something I develop stuff on my own outside of my quote unquote day job. I have a couple pilots right now at different networks, and if they end up getting greenlit, I would probably co-show run.
Okay.
Types of projects, I think they're all. I don't think anyone will be surprised that it's if my name's on it. Like I feel like my tone is my tone.
Okay.
And it'll feel very much like that sort of darkly comic sort of vibe that I like to put out into the world.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, like showrunning is a very interesting, difficult, time-consuming, crazy role, and so it's certainly something that having done it on that Skylanders Academy show certainly taught me a lot, but also it was on a much smaller scale and there's much less pressure on a show like that. So I'm curious how I would do on a quote unquote real show. So it's something I want to try. Whether or not it becomes the rest of my career, I don't know. We'll see if they give me my send me pack me off afterwards. But who knows?
Send you back to Disney.
Honestly, yeah, like they could certainly do that.
What have you found helpful in the pitching process once you I know you've talked in the past about just I think you have a clear commitment to the work over time, the writing, the sheer amount of writing that you're doing, both with the day job, but also the amount of work that you're just putting in day to day to get things out in the world. Once you've got things that you are happy with, is your reps pitching it for you? Are you in the room pitching it? What has been the most satisfying or useful for you once you're kind of at that point, once you've got the materials in a place that you're proud of?
As far as how I move forward, yeah. It is. Well, first I'll say doing generals and meeting execs and producers, you kind of feel like at first you're like, why am I doing this? And so it's just like they're not going to ever remember me. But meeting those people, you do make good connections. And so like a producer that I worked with, I had a general with years ago. I've now worked with several times, and if I have something, I can just go right to him and be like, "Hey, what do you think of this idea I have?" And he might be like, "We're looking for something like that. Why don't we talk a little more?"
Okay.
Or he might just be like, "We're not developing for that age group right now," or something. So having more connections of your own is certainly helpful, so you're not relying totally on your reps. But it is mostly still, unfortunately, it's a lot of getting your reps excited for your own material.
Okay.
And I've found, and my manager I work really well with, and what I like to do, and what I encourage people if they're considering getting a manager, from friends of mine have asked me this, what I really like about that relationship is I will send her 3 or 4 log lines, and my agent too. I'll send them 3 or 4 log lines. I'm like, what of these which of these ideas sort of spark something in you, or that you think would round out? I've done A, B, and C. Like, what else should I be doing right now? And they'll read that and they'll tell me I think one of these 2 ideas would be really good. And I know that as long as they're excited about it, then once I do the work, they'll then want to push and sell it and call people up, and they won't feel. They know they're not going to be sending a producer a false bill of goods.
Right.
So I feel like getting them excited is the first step.
Oh, that's smart to make sure that you've got the audience before you even put all the work in. I've had a cheerleader.
Yeah, something happened once. It's funny. I wrote this whole. I didn't really check with them on something. It ended up working out, but I didn't check with them on something. I just had an idea. I think it was during the pandemic, so I was just alone all the time. I need to write something new just to. I think I just finished Flight Attendant season 1. I'm I need something new.
Yeah.
And I wrote this pilot, and I'm like, here it is. And they read it, and they were both like, yeah, it's okay. We have we wish you would have checked with us first, because we kind of have 1 or 2 big thoughts about it. And they gave me we have one. like, you can ignore this note and we'll try to do something with this the way it is, or just think about it. And they gave me a huge note, and they were completely right. And then I went off and I completely reshaped this entire thing, which was a lot of work, but I did it. And then we ended up selling it.
Oh.
But so it's like, you know, I would have saved myself a little bit of work had at least gotten their feedback and seen what they, you know, what they had to think about it as far as A, the marketplace, and B, me as a writer, and how they would sell it with me as the writer.
Right. Okay. That helps. That's good. What do you like to do to keep yourself kind of current with the trends in the industry? Because I know so much of the advice that I've heard from the writing side has changed kind of with the pandemic, but then is changing with the strike. What are your, I mean, you're in the middle of it, so I think you're seeing it and you're talking to friends. Is there anything else are there sources that you trust or voices that you like to listen to in that area?
I mean, the answer a couple of years ago would have been just watch whatever's getting made, and you'll learn about what people are looking to buy and what people are looking to have written. And the problem is there's too much material now, too much content. So you can't advise someone to be like, just watch a couple shows and you'll learn what people are making. As far as that, I don't know. I think having people that you trust at certain levels. I mean, having people. I'm part of a problem that I have is I'm not a great networker, and I'm not the most social person in the world. But being friends with people who aren't just writers, I think, is very helpful. And seeing, knowing producers and knowing some execs and knowing showrunners and hearing what they're hearing, and I mean, I think just most advice I will give anyone is just about having multiple. Not to focus on one thing, if that makes sense. So, I mean, in a writer's, no one will complain more about what's getting made and what's not getting made than other writers, because your script wasn't bought. So we're always complaining like, oh, they're making that, but they're not making mine. But then, if you talk to an exec, they might say like, oh, like we're hearing, this is getting made because of X, Y, and Z, like, and that's what people are going to be looking for in the future, and just. Obviously, you can tell, like, they're not making a lot of multicam sitcoms anymore. Yeah. So it's like, don't write that. Yeah. So don't write that, or use that to your advantage and write that multicam spec that it's going to change everything. But I wouldn't advise that. But yeah, I think it's just sort of hearing multiple voices from different outlets and not being so insular about it, I guess.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you said one of the things that scares you as an artist is kind of screaming into the abyss. Is there anything else that comes up that scares you, or is that the main thing?
Well, certainly I'm a much better pitcher now than I used to be. And so even though we've discussed how I used to be in musical theater as a child, I am not a performer anymore in any respect of the word. And I had really bad stage fright and performance anxiety in my 20s.
Okay.
To the point where it was affecting my career. Because I'd be in meetings and I'd sort of shrivel up a little bit and I'd give one-word answers. I wouldn't talk back. I wouldn't be engaging. And getting over that, I mean, pitching is basically you're acting for 20 minutes straight. Yeah. It's a performance. And so having to get over that was a big, big hurdle.
What helped?
So a friend of mine convinced me to do a 8-minute stand-up set.
Oh,
and so I'm like, if I can survive this and not get booed off stage, which is what happened. I survived it. I didn't get booed off, and I'm sure it was not the best material in the world, but like I survived, and that alone really kind of helped sort of with a catharsis of sorts.
Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
On the flip side, what inspires you as an artist?
Seeing new and exciting projects coming out that I haven't. Anytime there's an idea where I'm like, how has no one thought of that before?
Yeah.
I always get very excited because it always reminds me of like, there's always another idea out there.
Yeah.
Whenever I hear a friend pitch me with their story, for whatever their new spec is going to be, and I'm like, that's great. Like hearing that they're still very interesting, exciting ideas that are being thought of in a world where so much of it, and I'm guilty of it as well, is like a lot of derivative stuff. And it's very, a lot of times we take things that inspire us and we just do our version of it. So when you hear something just completely off the wall and new, I always find that exciting.
Nice. Are there any quotes that inspire you or people that you look up to?
I certainly look up to my current boss.
Okay.
Who has done a lot for me in my career, and who I've learned a lot watching him deal with the network and the execs and how to run a room properly and how to treat people.
Yeah.
But a quote, a showrunner told me this when I told a former showrunner of mine that I was going to showrun this animated series. He gave me a quote to not really help me, but it did not. It was not. I don't know why he told me this, but I find that it applies to any kind of creative field. And his quote was about showrunning, but he was like, showrunning was basically you're pushing a 1,000-pound boulder up a hill, and on the other side are 90 people trying to push it back down. And I think he was saying that because he's like, the great genius is trying to do this work, and everyone's trying to get in the way.
Yeah.
But what I've taken from that is that it's going to be, there is that you are pushing a boulder up a hill, and you're hitting these things that are trying to push it back down, whether it's notes, whether it's getting told no on things, whatever it is always going to be someone on the other side of that sort of pushing it back down. And it's, you have to just remember to keep sort of going with it until you get to the top.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, he meant it more in like
his was dark.
These people getting in our way, and but I have taken it in another direction. I think
I like that. Yeah. Rebrand it.
A little bit. Yeah, exactly.
I have some notes on your notes.
Yep.
What is a creator's challenge that you would give to my audience?
I would say that I would recommend someone that they take a favorite short story of theirs and like record their own, I guess, audiobook version of it. Like read it out loud and then listen back to it. And I think doing that will teach people a lot about pacing and voice and how dialogue looks on the page versus when spoken out loud. And that's a lot of what TV writing is.
Yeah.
But I think really the pacing is especially when you're like, oh, like this, why did I put this in here? I just don't really need this.
Yeah.
It's taking too long. And so yeah, that would be my challenge.
I like that so much. And I will say, whenever I was watching The Flight Attendant, there was a couple of moments where I almost heard your voice saying the words in a good way, in a good time, and it made sense.
That's great.
And I was like, I know I can kind of hear your voice through the writing, but I literally heard your voice in my head. It was very cool.
I have a very distinct, I think, like without sounding too like obnoxious, like an Ian Weinreich script feels like it's me basically saying things.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy to tell things that I've written, for better or worse.
I think it's great. Yeah, because a lot of people lose their style and it's subsumed by other people's styles. Especially if you're good at TV writing, I think you have to build the skill of being able to write for different characters and write in your showrunner's voice and the overall tone of the voice. But being able to have that skill and still have your voice come through, it's pretty special. That's pretty cool.
I think a lot of it too is I'm lucky that the tone of that show was very much
in your tone.
In my tone. So if it was NCIS, Miami, maybe not. I mean, I would certainly try.
Right,
but,
right, you still have the skills to fall back on of the craft,
right.
But this is a better fit.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Well, where can people find you online?
If anyone wants to find me online, I guess my Instagram is just Ian Weinreich.
Awesome.
Spelled Weinreich. It's complicated. But yeah, that's really the only social media I use anymore.
All right.
So I turned 40 and I'm like, I can't have anything else.
This is my hill. I will be here.
Yep.
Yeah. You post excellent pictures of you and dogs, so I appreciate it.
That's mostly what I honestly.
It's excellent.
It's mostly just dog photos.
It's great. Yeah.
And none of them are mine. So
we can't have a pet either.
really?
Because Kyle's really allergic.
Oh, no.
But I grew up on a farm, so I
right.
love animals.
Yeah.
So I actually I spend a fair amount of time on Instagram watching other people's pets and enjoying them. So
Great.
I like that you do that. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to talk about, or anything you want to kind of leave people with?
Oh man.
And you don't need to.
No, I think you covered quite a bit of my career, and I guess I hope everyone just keeps being as creative as possible.
Yeah, I liked what you said about it's inspiring when somebody that you care about has an idea that you get excited about. That's so wonderful, because it's really easy to get cynical.
Absolutely.
It's so easy.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still have friends where we'll just do bits. Even if we're not going to ever write these stories, it's fun. I still have fun just going around talking about ideas and and nerding out on them, and even at this stage. So I feel like, and then something might come from that. So I think finding a way to still have fun, even when it's your job, because no one wants to have to come home from work being creative and then also be creative on their free time. Mm-hmm. But I think it is important. Yeah. Even if it's something completely different than what you're doing during the day, I hope people don't lose that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you very much, and
thank
cheers.
Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.